to be here. Welcome, everybody. And so you've got a question for us. Let's go for it.
Okay, it's actually a young lady who we've heard from her several times, and her name's Colleen, and she said, this morning I was listening to an old show from 2011 where you and Michael speak to a man, I believe it was Rex, and I noticed a big hole in my understanding. I wonder if you could address it on an upcoming show. I would call in, but I'm taking a class at that time and on some days, and I can't miss work on the others, so right now I'll listen to the archive. So Rex mentioned that he did some important work and made a breakthrough, and he knew when he woke up in physical pain that he was on the right track, or at least that's how I heard it. I realized then that somehow in the hours of listening and reading and all the worksheets where I check off the box that says I'm willing to go through the physical symptoms of healing, I do not have a firm grasp on what that really means. And she's been having physical pain. She actually has an Avicen, and she said it's helped her to relax and be calm, but it hasn't yet hit the physical pain that she's going through. And she says, am I going to feel like this forever? And is this in exchange for the peace that I feel in my mind? Or will there be something that I finally touch upon from inside that releases the pain from my body? Is it possible to get a detailed description of this aspect of the process of the forgiveness in an upcoming show, maybe with some examples or testimonials? And will you email me back which show if you decide to do so? Please and thank you. Blessings, Colleen.
Well, first of all, Colleen, I breathe with you. And one of the things you want to do is to make sure that you keep your breath moving, because that's one of the ways that we hold on to symptomatic energies and keep them locked into tissue. And it's interesting, I was talking with a gentleman yesterday, I was actually a therapist, and he's in a lot of process, big time process. And he texted me this morning and said, is it normal to feel like my entire world is falling apart? So a signal of the healing process from a different perspective than the physical. And I'll first read my reply to him. I actually just finished answering that, and then we'll go on and to speak more about your question. So my answer to him was, well, the truth is that's the objective. When the world between your ears, perception, and perception, remember, is a reflection of what's stored in our so-called physical bodies, carbon-based memory. So in the world between your ears, perception, the world where most people comfortably exist and are comfortable because everyone else is the problem in their lives, begins to unravel, the world is falling apart. The beauty is, as you go through the process, it is replaced with truth and love, and life becomes a different game. And the question then I asked him was, what will you need to face? And there was a gentleman named Francois Fenelon, and I haven't used his quote on the show in a while, so I'll bring it in now. I sent it to him. And this is a gentleman who, in the late 1700s or early 1800s wrote, late 1600s, early 1700s, described what the healing process looks like. As the light increases, so as you connect, as you're doing more and more of the right things, if you listen, I don't know, Jeannie, did we get the links to Colleen for the healing crisis radio shows we've done?
Yes.
Okay, good. So as you listen to that, that will really open the process up for you, Colleen. But here's what Fenelon wrote about 300 years ago. As the light increases, we see ourselves to be worse than we thought. We're amazed at our former blindnesses as we see issuing forth from the depths of our heart a whole swarm of shameful feelings, like filthy reptiles crawling from a hidden cave. We never could have believed that we had harbored such things, and we stand aghast as we watch them gradually appear. But while our faults diminish, the light by which we see them waxes brighter, and we are filled with horror. bear in mind for your comfort that we only perceive our malady when the cure begins. And it's interesting, over the years I've had many people who've said to me, well, I haven't been sick in years and years. I just never get sick, and I start doing this work and I'm sick all the time. Well, let's correct a little bit of language here. First of all, symptoms do not mean sickness. When you recognize that your so-called body is an energy system, relative to your system, there are two qualities of energy. There's that which raises the energy of the system up, integrative energy, and that which tears the system down, disintegrative energy. Tear down energy in the Aramaic language was represented by the word sin. When they said the wages of sin is death, that was not some kind of theological threat. God's going to get you for your sins. That was just telling us what's going on in physiology. And so what Fenelon writes here is about the mental aspect of healing. And if you go back and check the worksheet, you'll find that it doesn't ask you to step into willingness to go through the physical symptoms of healing. It asks you to consent to willingness to go through the physical, mental, and emotional aspects. So what Fenelon is describing here is the mental aspect of the things that we're going to start to become aware of that are locked within the system. On an emotional level, well, let's finish the mental part of it first. So on a mental level, healing looks like any kind of negative thought you've ever had and depression. On a mental level, people are going to get to feel and detox the energetic patterns that tied into the emotions created by negative thoughts. So it's going to look like any kind of negative feeling one has ever had, negative emotion one has ever had, I might more correctly say, and depression. That's part of the process of healing. And on a physical level, it's going to look like any kind of physical symptom you've ever had and low energy. And that's just a part of the process. I go back and I'll give you an example from my own process, my own life. At the time of my birth, my mother had toxemia. The last 6 days I was in utero, they gave her Pitocin to try to force me to be born. I guess I wasn't really happy about coming into the world because it took them 6 days to get me out. The night of my birth, they contacted my father at work and said, if you want to see this kid alive, you better get down here because he is not going to live through the night. That was my starting point. 3 or 4 times the first year of my life, according to my mother, I almost died. One time I can remember her describing my grandmother coming over to visit her, and I was having trouble breathing. I had lung disorders from whatever was going on at that point. And my grandmother took me from my mother and said, call the hospital, and your baby's dying. We better get going. And so I went through early years. I was always on an inhalator. I can't count the number of drugs I was given. The first 2 weeks of school, most every year I was not in school. I was in an oxygen tent in the hospital. One point I kind of woke up and said to myself, these drugs they're giving me are keeping me alive, but they're not healing me and they're killing me, and that's what started me on a search for healing. And aside from a tooth infection or two over the years, in the last 50 years, I haven't put a drug in my body. And I have gone through layer after layer. I remember one time, this goes back about 15 years ago, there was a group in Arizona that had asked me to come out and speak, and I did that. And I went into a healing crisis, detoxing my lungs. And the people who I was staying with, the people who had sponsored my workshops, had arranged a place to stay. And they were considering forcing me to go to the hospital because my lungs were so wretched by a detox that they literally thought I was going to die. I have had a wheeze in my lungs since infancy, until about 2 years ago when Jeanie and I got COVID. The number of times I've been around the sun and the condition of my lungs, I never should have survived COVID. The third day, or it might have been the fourth day, I don't remember now exactly. For Jeanie, her major healing from COVID came either the third day or the fourth day, and mine came on the opposite day. But since the third or fourth day I had COVID, I have not had a wheeze in my lungs. COVID healed or gave me the opportunity to do the final, and maybe not the final, maybe there are more layers, but a really powerful layer of cleaning out my lungs and healing them. And it was pretty hellish. Jeanie, the same time we both got COVID, she had worked in an office for, Jeanie, how many, 40-some years, and never really was taught anything about ergonomics, so had created quite a trauma for her neck. At the point where we got COVID, Jeanie I had ordered a device that kind of looked like a set of headphones that you put on your neck, but it was a TENS unit, an electrical stimulator. And for about 3 years, I don't know, you've used that thing pretty much daily in that 3 years, didn't you, Jeanie?
Yeah, I did.
And so for 3 years, in order to deal with the pain in her neck, Jeanie wore this TENS unit. And the fourth day of COVID, her neck pain disappeared. That was the end of her neck pain. So we both had major healing crises when we got COVID. And my offering to people is, and I've worked with many people over the last couple of years who've had COVID, and one of the things that happens is they tend to go to their darkest thoughts. I don't believe COVID has ever killed anyone. I believe that COVID energetically attaches to what people are already killing themselves with and accelerates the process. They die from what they're already creating their death out of. And COVID attaches to that energetically. A virus, they talk about killing a virus. You can't kill a virus because there's nothing alive about a virus. A virus is nothing but a piece of data. It's a piece of genetic information. And if there is a negativity and the virus that holds that same content is going around, then there's a place for it to attach. When it attaches, we'll do one of two things. We'll live in the one world universal religion of blame that we've all been brainwashed into. And when we're in pain or upset, we'll whine and complain about somebody or something else, or project on and blame ourselves. When we undo that, and those negative thought patterns and energetic patterns start to move, and instead we have the tools and choose to change them, then the very thing that would kill us will heal us. And healing is not Dr. Feelgood. So perception is a construct of our minds, and every energy that is reflected in our perception is a quality of energy held within our tissue structure. There are integrative and there are disintegrative qualities of energy. How long will it take to go through any particular set of symptoms? As long as it takes. I started working on cleaning up and clearing out my lungs as a very young man. And I feel like I reached a milestone, maybe a completion point, maybe not a total completion point on my lungs. But 2 years ago when I had COVID, I felt like I did one of my final major pieces of work around my lungs. The ensuing years were many decades. It's a process. When you start to realize that what you and I, when we choose to take on this work, are cleaning up are generations and generations and generations of physical, mental, and emotional energetic assaults, then facing the physical, mental, and emotional impact of those energetic assaults, choosing to bring them up out of your genes and clear them out, on the way out, they're going to show up as physical symptoms, physical pain, mental level, mental pain, emotional level, emotional pain. And pain is a wonderful thing. Pain has a wonderful purpose. Its purpose is to make our ears grow. When we live in denial and we feel comfortable blaming somebody else for what's moving in us, then we hide from ourselves the energy that we're blaming on someone else. When we put that energy into tissue, tissue says, ouch, that hurts. Stop doing this to me. And that's what pain is. So when I'm willing to embrace my pain, I don't know if you've listened to the show, and I don't know if Jeanie would know which one it was, but a couple of weeks ago, Aria came on to explain what she does when she hurts herself. And what we've worked with her in doing is if she hurts herself, instead of, ow, making it pain, holding on to the energy, holding her breath and locking that into tissue, what we've taught her to do is to breathe, to go inside of her body into what her mind calls pain, allow herself to shift out of experiencing pain into experiencing the energy sensation that's moving in her body. And what we've taught her to do is to look at, to literally go inside the energy wherever it is in her structure, feel the energy, and explore it. What color is it? Does it have a shape? Does it have a weight? Does it have a message for me? And then change the energy pattern. And so a couple of weeks ago, she got on the show to share that, to explain that to somebody, because that's what she does. So I'd invite you to start to experience this pain that you're going through, shifting your mind about it. Pain is something that's experienced in the mind. And that's one of the reasons why oftentimes pain will tend to seem to become more severe, is because we make a big mental thing of it. A way that that can be changed is to, one, breathe, which starts to dissipate the disintegrative energy that we're being warned about by the pain, starting to remove the energy from our structure. Restore the breath to that area of the structure and explore the energy. And I suspect that what you'll find is that whatever your pain is about, if and when you're willing to listen to it, the energy behind the pain will begin to dissipate and disappear, and you will become pain-free. Pain is nothing other than a warning signal that there's an energy in that tissue that doesn't belong there. Something's happening that doesn't belong there. And when you start to approach and deal with it, and again, when you allow yourself to experience whatever's going on in your structure as a sensation, we haven't been programmed that a sensation is going to be terrible, painful, hurt forever, blah, 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 whatever we've been trained about pain, or there's something to be afraid of or something dangerous, but to rather welcome it, go into it, experience its energy, experience its message, and begin to learn to take charge of that energy in your structure, and you can change that energy in your structure. So I hope that's helpful. That would be my input in that regard. And once Jeanie sends you the email with a link to this show, if there are any other thoughts or questions, I'll look forward to hearing about them. So, Miss Jeanie, do you have any thoughts to add to that? You're muted, sweetie.
Okay.
There you go. You're back.
So,
Go ahead.
I can give the example of, when we were in Costa Rica and we were doing an intensive there, and we'd been doing some workshops, and energy was high. And one night I was fixing a meal, and my side started hurting. I mean, I was just like bent over in pain. Probably if I'd been in the United States, I'd have headed to the doctor or the emergency room or something, because it was extreme. But being in another country, and Michael came down and did some energy work, and he asked me when I'd ever felt like that. And I said that the first thing that popped in my mind was when I was 19 and had side pleurisy. And, they gave me steroids and all kinds of things, and it took a couple of weeks to actually get over it. And Michael did energy work on me, and we breathed, and it still took about 6 or 8 hours, but then it was gone. And so instead of, taking something to suppress it, breathing through it and being with it, and doing the forgiveness work around, what happened when I was 19, and I was living on my own and newly divorced and full of fear and all kinds of things, and that was what triggered and what I did forgiveness work around. And like I said, it still took 6 to 8 hours, but the pain went away. But it was the healing crisis where I'd finally to deal with the things that were going on when I was 19. So, I mean, years later, and I finally, and actually, when we had COVID, the thing that I worked through the most was fear. And part of that was, because all of the news was, that COVID was basically a death sentence. And 2 years prior, my brother had actually died of COVID. And when I think about that, his fear at that time, he didn't want to get older. He had finally reached the age to get Social Security, and he hated it. It was just like, I don't want to get older. And the next thing you know, he died. He didn't get older.
I didn't have that piece of information about your brother, Jeanie. That's a new.
It actually just clicked just a few minutes ago that was what mentally was going on for him. And yeah.
Wow.
So I really hadn't thought of it myself until just a few minutes ago.
Powerful. Well, also brings up, another example of this was just back a few months ago. Jeanie became quite symptomatic and ended up going to the doctor. We did some work around it. And, when did it feel like this? Well, this felt like when I had mono. And mono is not a thing that's very popular these days, and not something I don't think they particularly test for, but we went through and processed everything that was going on when she was even younger than 19. I don't remember exactly what age it was, but all of the symptoms of mono were there. And when she went to the doctor, she asked them to test for mono. And sure enough, it showed up as mono, but it was not active. Her body was throwing off the energetic pattern of mono that had happened when you were what? What age were you, Jeanie? 13, 14? I'm not remembering.
I was 14 or 15, yeah.
Yeah. And so here she is decades later, and she doesn't test positive for not mono as active mono, but the energy pattern of mono is testable as her body's throwing it off. Now, if mono, or if anything, like my lung stuff, stays in tissue, that degenerative energy is what causes tissue to fall apart and ultimately become diseased and die. You'll remember we've spoken about a quote that came from the DeCourcy Clinic in Cincinnati, and I was at a medical conference. This goes back 4 decades or more ago, probably a little more than 4 decades, at a medical conference, and a research group out of Cincinnati, Ohio, a medical research group, had done some research on aging. And I heard this quote once from the platform, and it was burned into my brain. I have always remembered it. And here was this group of medical doctors' result of their research. Here's what they said. Time is not toxic. Time has no effect on human tissue under any conditions. It is the belief in the effects of time by those who subscribe to such a belief that acts as a poison. So my invitation to everybody who's listening, I'd invite you to join me. Several decades ago, I made a request of Ruka. I asked to be guided. And what I requested was to be shown and supported in working through literally every energetic pattern that had ever killed anybody in my bloodline. Knowing that those energetic patterns, if someone died of them, those energetic patterns were not resolved by that individual and not likely to have been resolved by any of the ancestors between them and me. And so I'd invite you to consider making that request. Now, doing it is not Dr. Feelgood, but each time you let go of another layer, like I say, my lungs, I should have been dead from COVID, the wheezing that had been in my lungs all my life is gone. So I'd invite you to consider making that request. And of course, make sure you're committed to using the tools. And remember to use the tools and breathe, because that's the process of youthing, of turning the clock of what we call aging back. You know, most everybody believes in age. Well, time is the enemy. No, time is not the enemy. It is the fact that we buy into and we engage in hostile, fearful, energetic patterns, thoughts, and behaviors on an ongoing basis, and doing that over time makes it look like the damage done by engaging those energies is inflicted by time. The only thing that inflicts damage on your tissue structure is engaging in an energy that does not belong in your tissue structure. Time is not toxic. Time has no effect on human tissue under any conditions. It is the belief in the effects of time by those who've subscribed to such a belief that acts as a poison. Are you willing to give up the poison? You know, if somebody asks me, Michael, how old are you? My response is eternal. And they'll go, yeah, well, I know that stuff, but really, how old? The only word I know is eternal. I don't know the number of years. I don't let my mind go there. You know, people will say to me, oh, what age is Arya? Or how, actually, they'll ask the question, how old is Arya? And they kind of look at me in a weird way when I say, she's not. How old are you? You're not. You're eternal. At least you're designed to be eternal. Are you going to manifest that? Are you going to bring that about? Well, if it becomes obvious to you that you are eternal, if every energy in you is of a constructive nature, then yes, that is what will become your experience. So I invite you to get on the team, because the more people who open this door and give up the blame game, the belief in the effects of time, the more people who do that, the faster the critical mass is going to shift. And the more of us are going to be able to stop this game of generational patterns killing us. We are not designed to die. Now, you can say, that's pretty wild stuff, Michael. Well, let's go. And, you know, a lot of people say they believe in what this man Yeshua taught. Let's listen to a quote from Yeshua in Revelations, and he says this. And I'll invite you to just allow yourself to take a breath and be with this. To he or she that overcomes, they will not taste of the second death. They will become a pillar in the temple of my God, and shall go out no more. That's a pretty clear promise. And what is the temple but your body-mind unit? And this is not a religious idea. I'm not talking about Yeshua as a religious figure. I think one of the most terrible things that has ever happened to the work and the teachings of Yeshua is the religionists took it over. It became about churchianity rather than about the work of Yeshua. And you'll notice how many people are out there raging and screaming and preaching dogma and doctrine about this and dogma and doctrine about that. And when one of them goes to Yeshua, he says, and proclaims, I healed people in your name, I did this, I did that. And he says, why did you not do what I told you to do? Get away from me, I don't know you. The man did not come to bring a giant belief system to be believed in. He came to bring a set of tools and a body of work for us to do in our lives, in our world, where we live, where we work, where we have our relationships, in our communities, not in our churches. You'll note he never said, I come to bring you dogma or doctrine. What did he say? I come to bring you life more abundantly. And they took it out of his mouth and put it away in the churches, hid it away in the deepest parts. And the work of Yeshua became a belief system to be believed in. And you hear how many people out there, you got to believe. Are you a believer? I'm not a believer. I accepted the man and his word. I put the tools to work. And guess what? They work. They work. But you have to use them. Don't be one of those people that he says, why did you not do what I told you to do? Now, notice there are people out there today in his name that are saying, well, there's nothing you can do because you're a hopeless, helpless sinner. That's a lie. That's just a flat-out lie told by somebody who doesn't want to face and deal with their own generational energetic traumas. And so put it off on him. Look, believer, be a believer. Let him do it for you. He's not going to do it for you. The man developed the most brilliant set of healing tools that has ever been seen on planet Earth. And most people reject them, but they go to church every Sunday and say the Our Father. In the name of a man who said, do not repeat and repeat like the pagans. You look at what people call the Our Father and call it a prayer, and it's not a prayer at all. You remember, if you look at the passages where that set of instructions came forward, they didn't say to Yeshua, say a prayer for us. They, the disciples, obviously confused, said to pray. Obviously, if they knew how to pray, they didn't, and they knew how to babble. If they knew how to pray, they wouldn't have asked him that question. That'd be a pretty silly question. Now, if I were, by example, let's imagine that I was a voice coach and I taught people to sing. And you were one of my students and you said, Michael, teach me to sing. If I sang a song for you, would I be teaching you to sing? No. You might incidentally learn something about singing if I sang a song for you. The man did not say a prayer. When you look at the Aramaic, what's called the Lord's Prayer, that most people just do from rote out of their memory, like it's just another set of words, exactly what he said not to do, he gave them a set of instructions. And the word prayer in Aramaic means, and this sounds strange at first, but they understood that we lived in an energy system, that we were not physical beings. So the word prayer in Aramaic means to set a trap for God. Now you say, wait a minute, that's crazy. You're going to capture God. What kind of silliness is that? Look at it with the brain cells of a physicist, and the man Yeshua was a physicist. I know that we live, move, and have our being in an energy field called love. And that we're moving through that energy field at about 7,000 miles an hour. And as a physicist, here's what I know. That when two energy fields hold a matching atomic magnetic structure, and you move one of them through another, there is a transfer of energy between the two. It's called resonance. So when you look at the Aramaic, what people call the Lord's Prayer, he's giving them a set of instructions for how to literally capture the active presence of love and reflect it into the world. The same way, your television set is hooked up to an antenna. The antenna is a trap for channel 2. If you want to tune to channel 2 and your antenna is oriented and aligned properly, then the antenna captures channel 2 and your television decodes it and reflects it into your room. If somebody goes up on the roof of the house and bends all the arms on the antenna and turns it backward, you're not going to be watching channel 2, or at least you're not going to get a very good representation of it on your TV set, because the trap for channel 2 has been damaged. Hostility and fear damages the trap, the human form that is designed to be properly aligned. That's part of the quantum still point process, is bringing literally the antenna of this energy system into alignment. If you've ever been to an intensive at Heartland, either a Why Is This Happening to Me Again or a teacher's training intensive, you'll remember the hands-on energy field work you were trained to do, to literally bring the antenna into alignment so that it captures a full complement of that energy in which we live, move, and have our being. And when that flow of love moves through your system, it moves out the hostility, the fear, the rage, the guilt, the grief, the pain, the drama, the trauma, and the blame. And now, having overcome, having removed those energetic patterns, you start to step into what a true human life is about. And that is to move through this energy field called active present love, to be so oriented and aligned, and that's what the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic explains how to do, to be properly oriented and aligned, capture that active presence of love, and literally become the instrument that pours the active presence of love into the world. That's what I am designed for, first and foremost. And if that is in you and poured into the world, you can't die. What has the world taught us to do? Blame everybody else. Hostility and fear. If you can't overcome that in you, then whatever hostility, fear, or blame you're engaging in is what will literally destroy your own tissue structure. I'm willing to go through the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms of healing means. I'm willing to overcome whatever's happened in my bloodline that has never been dealt with. I'm willing to move through that. I'm willing to apply forgiveness. Forgiveness meaning the removal of that energetic pattern, the facing and the bringing forward of anything hidden based in hostility or fear, bring it forward in the presence of active love so that it dissolves, so that it is transmuted, so that it is removed from the structure that it is destroying. And when it disappears, the symptoms will disappear with it, as will the pain. Now, if you're looking at something that maybe has gone back, I look at that example that I shared with you where I started with my lungs. I wasn't supposed to live through the first night according to the doctors. And it was just 2 years ago that the last wheeze came out of my lungs. It's not an instant process. I don't know how many generations have carried that energy. I have had, in the process work I've done over the years, many memories that I've allowed to come forward and process through of terror, and fear and grief and rage. I don't know how each of those healing crises that I've allowed myself to go through, that I've willingly embraced, were directly related to my lungs. But I'll tell you this, my lungs are the healthiest they have ever been in my life. And I've been around the sun a few times with very diseased lungs that were supposed to kill me. It's a process. Willingness is the cosmic grease that supports the energy moving. And one of the objectives of this educational process that we're engaging in with this radio show is hopefully to inspire each person that listens to willingness, to shift out of the game of denial. What is denial? Whenever I act or think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me. And that is the whole bottom line of the one world universal religion of blame, which we were all brainwashed into. I've never met anybody who was not brainwashed into that one world universal religion. And the denial, thinking or speaking as though somebody outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me, is how or the way that I dissociate from the content of my own mind and create an unnatural condition called an unconscious mind. An unconscious mind, by definition, means there are diseases in the structure, in the body, the so-called body, the energy system in which that mind energy is stored. When I'm willing to face and apply the tool of forgiveness, and the genius of that tool, a la first century Aramaic Yeshua, is beyond all comprehension for me. It's so absolutely amazing. And when you begin to apply it, what it allows you to look at is not always Dr. Feelgood. Am I willing? Am I willing to just breathe and go into this energy and explore it from the posture of conscious, active, present love? Remember in that quote I read from Francois Fenelon, brilliant, brilliant insight. As the light waxes brighter, we begin to see ourselves. It's only when one starts to come out of denial and allow the light to come into the structure that one is able to become conscious of what's going on. As I said when I started, answering your question, many people, I've never been sick, I'm never sick, and now I'm sick all the time. Well, what you're telling me is that for a long time you've been in denial. You keep a tight lid on it, and you don't allow any symptomatic energies to move. And the symptoms of healing are identical to the symptoms of disease. There is no difference symptomatically between a disease process and a healing process. The only difference is what direction is the energy moving in. And if it's moving in you, you're going to feel it. If you tighten up, if you hold your breath, if you go into its advice, rage, fear, condemnation, guilt, gossip, slander, then you just reinforced your own death and disease process. If you take responsibility for it and you literally become a vehicle for that in which you live, move, and have your being, where you are aligned, you literally enter into prayer, alignment with active present love, so that active present love flows through your physiology, then your physiology is flushed of its diseases. That's the bottom line of the work of Yeshua from day one. And that's what we're here to bring alive for people and make available. So I hope that makes sense of your question. And Jeanie, maybe we could put this particular show in with the others on healing crisis, because I think it hits some other points that are really key and important, and it's awesome. So thank you, Colleen, for the question. And now we're holding the space. And Miss Jeanie, we're down to about 11 minutes. I got on a roll there. And so do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room? Are you with us, Jeanie?
We do. Yeah, mute challenge. We do have a hand up, and it's Dusty 904. You're on the air.
Awesome. Welcome, good sir. How are you?
Well, I'm here, and I was hoping you'd sing a song. I didn't, and that's a weak attempt at levity, but I'm so glad.
You're really cutting in and out a lot, Dusty.
Oh, am I? Okay.
It's like your voice is like a chatter.
I was getting ready to hang up and dial back in. I thought it was my phone.
Okay.
No, your voice is like a chatter, so maybe you could dial back in, Dusty.
Oh, okay, yes. There's a big
Okay.
wind going
We'll
on
hold on
there.
for you to dial back in and see if it gets clear.
Okay. All right.
Always nice to hear from Dusty. Dusty's a young man that I've had a relationship with for better than a half a century, although I haven't seen him in, I'm not even sure, 46, 47 years. And so we'll take a breathing break, breathing intermission, and just
He's back.
allow everybody just to allow yourself to breathe, and let's say hello and see if we've got clarity on your voice, Dusty.
Is this any better? Can you hear me?
Only about 2,000%.
Oh, well, I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Well, good. Then everybody can hear you when you sing your song, right?
Which song was it I was going to sing?
I'm sorry. It was a weak attempt at levity at your talking about explaining Yeshua and, teach us to sing and sing a song, that thing. But at any rate, I loved it when you, that was just about the most brilliant or clear explanation of what some people call the early Jesus movement. I've just about always thought that they got it wrong from the beginning because they were looking for a Messiah rather than tools. And you've brought it back full cycle in just what you said. I hope that got recorded because it was really good.
Yeah, my take would be the tools are the Messiah. And that's why nobody wanted to use them even back then. And that's why he said, why aren't you? Don't tell me you're with me. I don't know you. You're not doing what I told you to do.
Exactly.
I mean, that even happened back 2,000 years ago. So we've got the documentation.
Yes, and with the RF engineer background, and I've climbed so many antennas, I love it when you use the word antenna because a while back, I'm going to share something that's personal, and your take on it would be wonderful to hear. But for a prayer, it just, it kind of came to me. I'll have my left hand up as if I'm going like an antenna, and then my right hand sometimes on the top of my head and something. And if I pray, I just pray for sometimes just for that which I don't even know I or the world needs. Sometimes I just feel almost like a current coming down my arm and into me. And it's like an antenna, and it's powerful when it happens, and usually it does. It's a beautiful thing. And there's this idea of blessing oneself and blessing others. And again, your analogy to antenna is so apt in my particular construct. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm working to remember The name of a gentleman, Larry, there it is, Larry Dossey, Dr. Larry Dossey. Dr. Dossey and I were on a platform about 35 years ago at a conference, and we were, talking about healing. And as a medical doctor, he wrote a book, and if I remember correctly, the title of his book is The Power of Prayer. And he did double-blind research in a hospital setting on people who were prayed for and people who were not prayed for. And, the thing that triggered that for me was you mentioned sometimes I don't even know what I'm praying for, quote unquote. What they found was that when someone simply, without conditions, totally embraced the object, the medical object of their prayer in love and a non-directed energy toward them, meaning, oh, I want you to fix Charlie's or Bill's gallbladder. No, if Bill had a problem with the gallbladder, it wasn't that you were going to direct the fixing the gallbladder. What Dossey found in his research was that the most powerful energetic healing shift happened for people when it was non-directed. It was just embracing them. And there it is. That's the word in Aramaic for prayer. Like, do I know what needs to shift in that person? I don't know, but there's a power in them, same power in me. Am I willing to put the support energy toward them if they feel like they don't have the vitality themselves? I think this is exactly what was happening in the situation we hear about, where we're told that this particular woman had a quote unquote 12-year issue of blood. She had a period that hadn't stopped in 12 years. And she knew that she would heal if she could just touch the hem of his garment. And people think, oh, she had to touch a piece of cloth, but that wasn't what was being spoken of. She knew that she didn't have the vitality to handle the dis-ease energy that was impacting her physically. And she knew that if she could connect energetically as a broadcast system, because our antenna not only receives, but broadcasts, if she could connect with the vitality that he had, it would boost her vitality, and she'd be able to process through what was impacting her physiologically. And that's exactly what she did. And then when they want to give him the credit for it, he says, no, it was her. It was her that did it, not me. Yeah. And that we can be that for each other. And it's totally and completely, the energy impact is totally and completely non-local. It's like it doesn't matter where we are in time and space. There's nothing we know that can stop this high energy wave of active present love and the thoughts connected to it when we tap into it and direct it somewhere.
Yeah, I get that. And when that hospital test was done, was there any particular results that they came up with that were significant?
Oh, he's got a whole book of results. He did several different studies, and that showed that people who had this non-directed love energy pointed toward them, which they identified as prayer, that they had much better outcomes than people who did not have that benefit.
Of course, yes. And that I'm really so glad to hear you talk about or us being. I'm. By the way, I almost went to urgent care today, so if I'm a little stuttery when I talk, I apologize, but that's what I'm dealing with right now.
Well, know that we're extending that energy in your direction.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I'll take anything I can get that's of love, and
yeah. The name, I just looked it up, the name of Larry's book is Healing Words, The Power of Prayer and Practice and the Practice of Medicine. So Larry Dossey, Dossey, Healing Words, The Power of Prayer and the Practice of Medicine.
Got it. Thank you. And that idea that we don't always pray for an exact specific thing in a person, but a just, for their highest good or whatever it is, has been in and with me for a while, because if someone is suffering from something, I don't really necessarily know what they need. I might think I do, and I might get lucky and be right. But so I don't know of a name for that other than call it some form of grace or some form of love or whatever. But it is an intention of well-being for that person. And I guess all we can do, all I can do, let's put it that way, first person is just ask that whatever they need, they really get. And
it's a definite gift.
And that is just about always the most effective. And I do it for myself regularly, just to keep myself vertical. The other thing that is kind of a partner with that is that's one reason why, or it's connected with, you can't really judge people. We can discern things in the world, but you can't really judge, because you don't know. You don't know what that person's really been through, or whatever it is, or if they've got a sickness, what that is. So getting the 9 bits of carbon memory or whatever out of the way and just let it happen is so
important,
beautiful.
for sure.
And I really appreciate that you brought that up with the whole antenna thing. It reinforced that in me.
Awesome. Well, delighted to be on the team. And the show's just announced in my ear that we're complete. So I'm going to say thanks for joining us. We appreciate you and cherish you, and are extending that healing energy in your direction. By the way, I just looked healing words up on Amazon, and I don't know why in particular, but they've got the paperback on sale for 53% off at $7. So I just ordered another copy of it. I've got one at Heartland, but I don't have one here. But anybody who's listening, you might want to check out Larry Dawsey, Healing Words. And beyond that, appreciate you, Dusty, and everybody have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's been awesome.